McKenzie Lueck was 23 years old and had her whole life ahead of her. She was a kinesiology student at the University of Utah, passionate about helping others and planning a future in nursing or medicine. But everything changed in June 2019 when she boarded a flight back to Salt Lake City after attending her grandmother's funeral. What should have been a moment of mourning and return to routine became a real nightmare. Just hours after landing, McKenzie vanished without a trace. She took a Lyft ride around 3 a.m. and asked the driver to drop her off at Hatch Park, saying she was meeting a friend. According to the driver, nothing seemed suspicious. She appeared calm, confident, and knew exactly where she was. But something strange happened. Her phone was turned off just minutes later and was never switched on again. The security cameras at the home of the man who met her had already been disabled, as if everything had been premeditated. No park cameras recorded who picked her up. It was as if McKenzie had disappeared from the world in a matter of minutes. What led a young college student to meet someone in that park in the middle of the night, right after her grandmother's funeral? Who was this mysterious friend she seemed to know so well? And why was she never seen alive again? This is the beginning of one of the most disturbing and tragic stories in recent years. An online arranged meeting, an inexplicable disappearance, and an ending no one could have imagined. Salt Lake City was silent that early morning. It was June 17, 2019, around 3 a.m., when McKenzie Lueck stepped out of a Lyft in the parking lot of Hatch Park. The place was nearly deserted, with no surveillance cameras and far from the main road. The rideshare driver reported that she appeared calm and determined. At no point did she seem scared or hesitant. She said she was going to meet a friend, then disappeared into the darkness of the... What no one knew at that moment was that just minutes after leaving the car, McKenzie would turn off her phone. From that moment on, she became unreachable. All attempts by her family and friends to contact her went straight to voicemail. Hours passed, then days, and still no sign of the young. The feeling of anguish grew by the minute. The driver who had dropped her off at the park was questioned by police and quickly released. He said McKenzie willingly got into another vehicle and that he noticed nothing suspicious. Authorities soon realized a troubling detail. The park had no active surveillance. There was no footage showing who picked her up or where she went. A dark hole had opened in the investigation. With McKenzie missing, police began tracking her last digital interactions, messages, calls, and movements. The last known message was sent exactly at 2:58 a.m., just minutes before she vanished. And the recipient of that message would become the key piece in unveiling the face of horror. From here, the line between a consensual meeting and a sinister plan begins to blur. What did McKenzie think she was doing that night? Did she really know who was waiting for her in the park? And most importantly, why was she never seen alive again? The next discoveries would reveal a hidden world of sinister intentions and dangerous choices. Before becoming the victim of a brutal crime, McKenzie Lueck was an ordinary young woman with dreams, plans, and a life full of potential. Born in El Segundo, California, she was the middle child of a loving family. From an early age, she showed interest in healthcare. That passion led her to choose kinesiology at the University of Utah, where she was known for her dedication and kindness. Friends described McKenzie as kind, outgoing, and highly organized. She maintained a disciplined routine, balancing her studies with work and her social life. She loved sports, adored her pets, and got along with almost everyone. On social media, she was active, sharing moments with friends and family, and even wellness tips. There was no sign that her life hid anything dangerous or unusual. But like many college students, McKenzie also looked for ways to support her financial needs. It was in this context that she discovered the website Seeking Arrangement, a platform for relationships between sugar daddies and sugar babies. McKenzie used the site discreetly as a way to supplement her income. For her, it was simply an alternative means of maintaining her autonomy and lifestyle. Although some may judge this kind of choice, it's important to remember that she wasn't doing anything illegal. McKenzie took precautions, only scheduled meetings in public places, and always seemed to be in control of the situation. At least until that day. Her involvement with the platform would become the very link connecting her to a man with far darker intentions than anyone could have imagined. A man who, behind a facade of normalcy, was hiding terrifying secrets, and who would soon become the prime suspect in her disappearance. At this point, the image of a lively young woman begins to merge with the investigation of a cruel crime. where each detail of McKenzie's personality helps to understand the complexity of what was coming. Among McKenzie's final messages, one caught the investigators' attention. It was a frequent contact, someone who had become more active in the days leading up to her disappearance. Ella Ajayi, a previously unknown name, but one that would soon be all over national headlines. Ajayi was a 31-year-old Nigerian immigrant who presented himself as a businessman and author. He and McKenzie began communicating through seeking arrangement. To many, Ajayi seemed like a regular. He had a social media presence, a very professional background, and tried to maintain an image of success. But gradually, darker layers of his life began to surface. He had been expelled from university for inappropriate behavior, had issues with his visa in the U.S., and harbored a digital trail filled with strange behavior. One of the most disturbing details, he had published a fictional novel about kidnapping, torture, and murder, with graphic, macabre descriptions eerily similar to what would happen to him. Investigations showed the two had exchanged intense messages before meeting. McKenzie trusted him. She believed he was just another sugar daddy she could talk to, meet, and maintain a consensual arrangement. But Ajayi wasn't just another man looking for companionship. He had a history of manipulation, control, and obsessive behavior toward women. Police also discovered that weeks before the disappearance, Ajayi had tried to hire a contractor to build something highly unusual, a secret, soundproof room with hooks on the walls, a biometric lock, and full isolation. The contractor refused the job, but that strange request would become a key piece of the puzzle. What McKenzie thought was a normal meeting was, for Ajayi, the culmination of a meticulous plan, a plan involving silence, control, and brutality. And little by little, the puzzle of this crime began to take shape. 1 week before McKenzie's disappearance, Ayoola Ajayi contacted a contractor with a disturbing request to build a secret room in his house. The project included soundproof walls and doors, a biometric lock, and metal hooks fixed in specific spots. Suspicious of the nature of the request, the contractor immediately declined and reported it to authorities once Ajayi's name appeared in the investigation. This revealed something even more disturbing. The crime had not been impulsive. It had been coldly calculated. Police discovered Ajayi had already disabled his home security system before meeting with McKenzie. No cameras, no alarms, nothing that could record what happened. The preparation was clear. He didn't want to leave a trace. Additionally, data extracted from his devices showed searches on body incineration, evidence destruction, and digital camouflage technique. He had also deleted messages and location records, though forensic experts were able to recover some of the data. All of this pointed to a level of planning far beyond a casual. Ajayi's home, though seemingly ordinary, contained several suspicious elements, from the intentional absence of furniture in certain rooms to signs of poorly executed recent renovations. Each discovery heightened the tension and reinforced the theory that McKenzie had been lured into a trap. As the investigation deepened, even more evidence emerged that Ajayi acted methodically and strategically. He wasn't just any criminal. He was someone who fantasized about total control, submission, and destruction. And at that moment, McKenzie had become the target of his darkest desires. The case took on a new dimension. This wasn't just a disappearance. It was a meticulously orchestrated murder. And with every new detail revealed, Ajayi's image shifted from anonymous stranger to a dangerous predator lying in wait. Days passed, and McKenzie's silence became unbearable for her family. She was used to keeping frequent contact with her parents and friends, and her disappearance didn't feel like a voluntary break. That's when her anguished father requested a welfare check from the police. He knew something was wrong. His daughter was predictable and organized. She would never just vanish. Close friends confirmed the growing concern. McKenzie wasn't answering messages, wasn't attending classes, and had stopped interacting on social media. For someone so connected, this kind of disappearance was completely out of character. It was as if she had been swallowed by a black hole. Police began reconstructing her final steps. Using Lyft records, testimonies, and location data, they confirmed she was dropped off at Hatch Park at 3 a.m. The driver, questioned again, reiterated that she appeared calm when she got into the other car, and that the choice seemed entirely voluntary. The digital investigation also revealed that her last message was sent at 2:58 a.m., just seconds before the driver arrived at the... This detail raised even more suspicion that the meeting might have been prearranged. Police began closely examining McKenzie's online life, and Ajayi's name quickly stood out among her recent... Meanwhile, a sense of fear spread throughout the student community. Several students came forward to report strange encounters and suspicious messages from profiles similar to Ajayi's. The case began to make local headlines, and public pressure on authorities intensified. As the evidence piled up and the family demanded answers, the police decided to act more aggressively. Search warrants were issued, leads were pursued more thoroughly, and the hunt for Ajayi gained momentum. The investigation was no longer just about McKenzie's whereabouts. It was about stopping someone who clearly posed a real threat to other women. During one of the search warrant executions, a new clue completely shifted the direction of the investigation. A neighbor reported seeing thick smoke and a strong odor coming from Ajayi's backyard just days after McKenzie's. At first, it seemed like he was just burning trash, but the police decided to investigate. In Ajayi's backyard, authorities found burned remains buried in a recently disturbed area. Among the items were fire-blackened fabric, strands of hair, bone fragments, and most shocking of all, McKenzie's partially burned student ID card. They also found a gas can and disposable glove. The evidence was there, mixed with soil, melted plastic, and horror. With these findings, the forensic team launched an urgent analysis. The genetic material extracted from the bones and hair confirmed it. They were human remains, and they belonged to... The backyard had been the scene of a brutal crime and a desperate attempt to destroy the evidence. Ajayi had tried to erase everything and failed. As the news spread, panic gripped the community. Authorities increased surveillance, and the media began to press for faster answers. The case was no longer just about a missing college. It had become a symbol of extreme violence within a digital landscape many still underestimate. Forensics also found traces of blood inside the house, hidden beneath layers of paint and newly installed floor. McKenzie's fingerprints were identified on personal objects within the home. The evidence was overwhelming. Police now had enough to arrest Ajayi and present a solid case to the district attorney. The seemingly innocent garden became the key to the investigation. It was there, among ashes and charred fragments, that the truth began to emerge. McKenzie had been murdered, and Ajayi had tried, in vain, to cover up what he had. With forensic evidence confirming the remains found in the backyard belonged to McKenzie Lueck, Salt Lake City police intensified the operation against Ayoola Ajayi. He was already the primary suspect, but now there was enough physical, digital, and testimonial evidence to arrest him. The arrest wasn't dramatic. Ajayi was quietly taken into custody at his home without resistance. During interrogation, Ajayi vehemently denied any involvement in McKenzie's disappearance. He claimed not to know her and said they had never met in person. However, digital records told a different. Text exchanges, geolocation data, and even phone call logs confirmed that the two had communicated intensively in the days leading up to her disappearance. McKenzie's final message, in fact, was sent to him at 2:58 a.m. In addition, Ajayi's car contained a gas can identical to the one found at the crime scene. His internet search history included queries about body decomposition, incineration methods, and how to avoid digital tracking. All of these elements created an undeniable picture. He had premeditated, executed, and attempted to cover up McKenzie's murder. The community reacted with shock. The case, which had already gained national attention, now became a brutal example of the danger that can lurk behind seemingly harmless internet profiles. Authorities issued warnings about the need for increased security and monitoring on dating platforms, especially those with financial dynamics like seeking arrangement. Ajayi's name was splashed across headlines nationwide. His carefully crafted online image was crumbling before everyone's eyes. He had gone from aspiring entrepreneur and author to a potential confessed murderer. And even with the arrest, one mystery remained. What exactly happened then? The most disturbing answers would come next, straight from Ajayi's mouth. With all the evidence piling up, the pressure on Ajayi mounted. At first, he maintained his innocence. But faced with overwhelming proof and the prospect of a harsher sentence, he changed strategy. Through his attorney, Ajayi finally confessed. He had killed McKenzie Lueck. The confession was chilling. Ajayi admitted he lured McKenzie to his house under the promise of him. Once there, he tied her up, strangled her with a rope, and then burned her body in the backyard. He claimed he did it all alone and had planned the crime in detailed days in advance. After incinerating the remains, he buried them in his yard. Days later, fearing discovery, he dug them up and transported them to Logan Camp, 85 miles away, where he reburied them, thinking they'd be safe forever. This revelation devastated McKenzie's family. The brutality of the act and the coldness of the execution were hard to comprehend. A case that was already tragic took on even darker dimensions. And perhaps most infuriating, Ajayi had tried to convince authorities he wasn't involved, despite planning every step of the crime. During his hearing, Ajayi showed a blank expression. He claimed to feel remorse, but his words were met with skepticism. His cold demeanor, the details of the execution, and his attempt to deceive everyone pointed to someone extremely dangerous. There was no justification, only horror and inhumanity. The confession didn't just solve the mystery of what happened to McKenzie. It confirmed that the danger she faced was far greater than anyone had imagined. Her trust, vulnerability, and desire for independence had been exploited by someone with a twisted desire for control and destruction. The truth was now clear, but the emotional and social impact would last far longer. On July 7, 2020, Ayoola Ajayi pleaded guilty to aggravated murder and abuse. By accepting a plea deal, he avoided the death penalty, but was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, along with 5 additional years for other charges. During the trial, McKenzie's family had the opportunity to speak. Their words were filled with pain, anger, and disbelief for them. There was no real remorse in Ajayi's behavior. Justice had been served, but nothing would bring McKenzie back. Her case became a stark warning about the hidden dangers of online meetings, even those that seemed consensual and harmless. The Seeking Arrangement website came under heavy criticism and pressure to revise its safety policies. Other users began to publicly share frightening experiences with profiles similar to Ajayi's. In addition, a second victim came forward. Another woman reported Ajayi for abusive behavior and attempted assault during a previous encounter. This reinforced the predatory pattern of his actions. What he did to McKenzie wasn't an isolated act. It was part of a series of abuses hidden behind a carefully curated image. McKenzie's story also opened space for serious conversations about digital safety, female empowerment, and the role of social media in protecting or exposing vulnerable users. Universities began implementing prevention policies, and awareness campaigns were launched across the United States. In the end, Ajayi was locked away forever, but the trauma he caused spread far beyond the borders of Salt Lake City. McKenzie Lueck became a symbol of the fight for justice and the importance of protecting young women who, like her, simply wanted to live with freedom, autonomy, and dignity. McKenzie Lueck's case didn't end with the arrest of her killer. In fact, it sparked a wave of social changes, public discussions, and important transformations in how we deal with digital safety, online dating, and the vulnerability of young women in virtual. McKenzie's name became remembered not only because of the tragedy, but because of the strength her story inspired across many communities. Universities across the country began reviewing their student support protocols, offering more resources for abuse victims, anonymous reporting channels, and digital safety education. Feminist groups and women's advocacy movements began referencing McKenzie's story in lectures, campaigns, and forums as a warning of how violence can wear the mask of charm and normality. The impact also reached the legal sphere. Debates over regulating platforms like Seeking Arrangement were reignited. Lawmakers discussed how to increase user transparency and hold companies accountable for failing to provide effective verification and protection systems. The case became a milestone, a painful but necessary reminder. McKenzie's family chose to turn grief into action. They created a foundation in her name, focused on educating young people about online safety and supporting families facing similar trauma. The project offers school lectures, university workshops, and free psychological support for victims of digital violence. The goal is clear: to ensure no young woman faces such a fate in silence. McKenzie became a symbol. Her story crossed Salt Lake City's borders and echoed across the country. Her voice, though silenced, continues to be heard through advocacy, awareness, and action. Her legacy is one of resilience, education, and courage. McKenzie Lueck's story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the modern world. We live constantly connected, meeting people online, forming relationships through messages, trusting apps, and exposing parts of our lives without realizing the risks. Her case shows that even when everything seems under control, danger can be lurking, disguised as normality, hidden behind screen. One of the key lessons here is the power of awareness. Mackenzie's father acted because he noticed her silence as a warning sign. Her friends raised alarms because they knew she wouldn't vanish without a reason. In many missing persons cases, the first hours are critical, and the involvement of close ones can be the difference between saving someone and arriving to. We also learned that prevention needs to start early. Conversations about online safety, digital relationships, consent, and self-protection must happen in homes, schools, and communities. It's not enough to say don't talk to strangers online. We must teach how to recognize manipulation, psychological abuse, and warning behavior. Another crucial point is platform responsibility. Dating sites, especially those involving financial dynamics, must adopt stricter policies, real profile verification, and efficient reporting tools. Mackenzie's case wasn't the first and sadly won't be the last to expose these critical flaws. Finally, her story reminds us that justice is not only about punishment. It's about prevention. It's turning pain into action, fear into movement, silence into a voice. Let McKenzie Lueck's story be remembered not only for its tragedy, but for everything it taught us. May her memory inspire us to build a safer, more attentive, and more humane world. This was another real story, marked by pain, courage, and the pursuit of justice. If you made it this far, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who needs to hear. See you in the next case. Secret Room, where secrets come to light.